Got two veins is gonna get melted.
Do I think mobile esports is a phase? No, absolutely not.
And Hack just don't understand what happens. Oh.
Welcome to the Halcyon Report. My name is T-Dog Klysis. Joined with me today is beerad and SuiJeneris. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
Hey, good. Great to be here as well.
Well, the first ever Vainglory World Championship took place at the end of 2016 in Hollywood, California. We had multiple international events before, from the Vainglory World Invitational to multiple seasons of Vainglory Invitational Premier League, or VIPL. This is the first worldwide championship produced by SEMC. Is this a coming of age sign, Brad?
So it seems like a great sign for the game. I don't think it was like too early to happen yet, but as for like a coming of age sign, I think we'll have to see how it plays out in 2017 here, because the game needs to reach people outside of Vainglory. I think internally it looked like a great event. I wasn't there personally, but everyone I talked to and heard from, they sounded like they had a blast, but I don't know how much it was talked about outside of the game, and I think that's what we need to see happening with the World Championship events like this. It was our League of Legends, World Championships kind of thing, and were people talking about it?
Yeah, the Vainglory Championships had around 25,000 plus peak concurrent viewers, which is so exciting. It's also very exciting to be there live, like Brad was saying. I mean, getting to meet everybody in the community and seeing the energy and enthusiasm. It was a great sign for Vainglory's growth and global viewership. And I agree with Brad. VG Worlds received coverage from media outlets such as VentureBeat, but didn't get more extensive coverage, which I think would have been great. And I think it's also important to note that the year or so of the development that led to produce such an event, SMC has done a really good job of supporting not only the players, but also the communities across the world, to be able to achieve such a great milestone of growth for the competitive scene and for Vainglory as a game. To me, it was a combination of that hard work and a journey, and I just can't wait to see, how this year, 2017, pans out.
3 North American teams and 1 Korean team made it to the semifinals, but the Korean team, Phoenix Armada, still managed to take the win. Earlier that year, Vainglory International Premier League was also won by a Korean team. Are we seeing a repeat of League of Legends and StarCraft history here, Sue?
Yeah, based on the uber competitiveness, I would say so, and it's shown historically with VIPL. However, we did see Gangstars and TSM also take the championship for VIPL. But Armada, Phoenix Armada particularly, that team's dedication and focus was just way above and beyond all of the top teams. So I wasn't surprised. I knew that it would be a tough competition for any NA teams to unseat them. And they will continue to be extremely formidable competitors going into the next World Championships here at the end of 2017. However, I do have to say that NA teams were the most competitive overall as a region. So that's, I guess, a good sign of hope. And I think the top NA teams, such as, TSM, Hammers, Gangstars, etc., will need to train harder and smarter than Phoenix Armada. And they deserve the win because they put in the 10-plus hours each day of practicing. You could see it in their teamfight focus, and most importantly, the lack of mistakes their teams made compared to their competition. I think that's huge for a game like Vainglory, especially in a 3 vs 3 format. In a 15 to 20 minute game. This is what dedication and focus yields, right? And at this level of competition, 1 to 2 mistakes can lead to a huge lead that just snowballs and wins the game. And you saw that a lot with Phoenix Armada's playstyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's that dedication. That's right. Like, the Koreans treat video games and esports like way differently than we do here in the United States and EU. And I think someone has a chance to unseat them, and I agree, like, it's the focus and the time commitment that needs to be put into place there. We saw at Worlds, like, Phoenix Armada, like, they kind of adapted to what the NA teams were doing, but the NA teams didn't adapt quickly enough to adapt to what they adapted to. So we need to see more of that happening, like just the teams in NA and EU kind of coming together and just like working harder, I want to say.
Well, Monte Cristo is our guest today, and we asked his thoughts later on in the episode, so be sure to stick around for that because his answer is one that we did not expect. So stick around. A new rule went into effect at the beginning of this year, which is an organization can only field one team globally across all SEMC-sanctioned competitions. No organization will be able to do what Gangstars did a few months ago, where they brought 2 teams to the World Championship, given the current state of Vainglory Esports. Do you guys feel that this rule was rushed, just perfect, or perhaps a little late?
Being rushed, no, I think it's a good coming out of Worlds, but I think there's more to this than I know. Not being on being on a team, not being a captain. I think there's some stuff happening with the franchise system that's really going to just allow more teams and organizations to come into the fold. Like, there's a good chance we may see some of those other high-profile organizations have the opportunity and the means to enter now.
Yeah, it definitely felt rushed. I talked to a lot of fellow org leaders and owners, and we all kind of had a little consensus that we're kind of putting the horse before the cart, so to speak. However, after Vainglory Worlds, I agree that the ruling is timed just about right, I would say, with many orgs now entering, from big names like Cloud9 to other orgs such as Divine and Synergy Esports. So super excited to see all these new orgs and upcoming orgs entering the scene and willing to compete in Vainglory. And as a former leader of organizations such as VIP, Nemesis, and Hammers, I think it will be great for the other competitive teams and orgs to enter, resulting in more diverse talent and competition, which is overall going to be healthy for the Vainglory esports scene. And we see a lot of new talent just from me playing in the game. There's a lot of new players and new talent that's emerging that I can't wait to see in the competitive scene. And going to this season, there will be 8 separate and different teams competing in each region, and that's going to result in some fun and interesting team matchups for sure.
Well, regarding those fun and interesting team matchups that you just mentioned, Sue, recently Vainglory just had its first Arena 8 for Japan. Japanese and Korean teams, with Team Phoenix taking first and new challengers coming in second. Was this expected for the world champions to win this?
I think we'd be more surprised if they didn't win. That'd be the bigger story. The fun thing about esports is like one single update or smallest change can really have effect from one update to the next on how a team performs and plays, and it gives another team that opportunity to come in.
Yeah, Brad hit a nail on the head. I did expect them to win this. However, I did not expect them to struggle as much to get there, especially against new challenger in the grand finals. The first match, Phoenix Armada versus new challenger, you guys haven't watched it, they were steamrolled. That means Phoenix Armada actually lost with 0 kills and new challenger had 13 kills. Mango later tweeted after he won that this patch has been a little difficult for him to adapt to. And however, Armada did pull through and won, and this just shows you that teams can rise and fall from patch to patch. So the best teams 3 months ago might not be the best teams now, which makes for very interesting power shifts and team dynamics, as well as it highlights that the best team is most likely going to be the team that's most versatile around mastering patch updates to updates.
Well, that is going to be our news for this week. Definitely stick around because we will be talking with MonteCristo as our special guest. Pete Westwood reports.
Thank you again for being our first guest for Halcyon Report. Kind of a big deal. Without further ado, I guess, Christopher Michaels, a.k.a. MonteCristo, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the very first show. I haven't been casting Vainglory in a while, but really enjoy the game. I actually had a chance to cast the World Championship, but I couldn't come because my main contract with OGN prevented me from being there because I had to cast the season finals for Overwatch. It was on the same weekend. It was a big bummer for me, actually. I really wanted to come out.
Damn. So, I mean, I want to get into you even kind of getting started with Vainglory. But, first things first, How did you get started with with gaming and give me your background on that?
Started with a lot of Blizzard titles like Warcraft 1. And I ended up really getting involved in the esports scene first in Warcraft 3 in about like 2003, 2004. Ended up doing a bunch of casting and content creation for that, doing journalism work at events. And then I changed it into, I think Overwatch is now my 7th game that I've casted over the last, 12 years. So I've been around for a long time. I started out as an actor, too, when I was 8. So I did about 30 live stage productions all the way through college. And then I was a sports fan, like I'm a big football fan, big Denver Broncos fan. So it's like gaming and sports and theater all kind of collided into esports casting. It was a pretty good mix, if I do say so myself.
You kind of got into the beta phase on League of Legends when you were working at a law firm?
Yeah, I was in New York. I was working at a law firm, but I got into beta because my college roommate was one of the first 50 or 60 employees at Riot. Basically just sat around the Riot offices with him for a week, just playing the game, talked to Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill and Tom Caldwell and some of the presidents, CEOs, lead game designers about the viability for esports because they knew I had an esports background. So I had individual meetings with those guys, talked to them about, I thought it was a great game, thought it had a lot of potential for esports. And so just sort of kept up contacts within Riot from that point forward. It's been a pretty wild ride, and I am disappointed at what the Riot Esports department has become over time. But the rest of the company is quite good, and I still really enjoy the game.
And how about that transition then over to Overwatch?
Well, when Doa, my casting partner, and I first saw Overwatch, we knew that it was going to be very popular in Korea immediately because it's a Blizzard title. The artwork is very good for Korean audiences. It was a revitalization of a genre that had fallen by the wayside. And we saw also because we thought it was going to be big in Korea and big in the West at the same time. We saw it as the first opportunity to really have a truly global FPS esport. That has so far happened, and it's been really exciting. It's been #1 in PC bongs for most of the time since its release.
Straight fire question, favorite character on Overwatch, go.
Reinhardt. I play basically only Reinhardt because I can't fucking aim. I'm good at decision making, but I'm now in my 30s, so I'm too old to actually have those reflexes.
I mean, you obviously you have this experience. What attracted you to Vainglory?
So I was obviously, as a longtime PC player, skeptical about when I first came in about there being a sort of active esports scene around a mobile title. So I decided to download the game and give it a shot. And I was actually amazed at how good Vainglory was and how competitive it was and how mechanically demanding it was. And then I started talking to Super Evil Megacorp. And they have been, honestly, one of, if not the best company to work with in esports. It was really deep. And so I started very much enjoying casting it as the VIPL started up in Korea. So it was, doing 3 seasons of that so far. It's been a lot of fun for me.
So you don't, in that sense then, obviously with the kind of mobile esports, you don't believe that it's a phase at all?
Do I think mobile esports is a phase? No, absolutely not. I mean, just factually, more people have mobile devices. If you can create incredibly, as technology improves, and you can create more responsive and more graphically intensive and more like hardware demanding games on mobile devices, you're tapping into the largest audiences of gamers in the world. So I don't think mobile esports or mobile gaming is going anywhere, right? It's the largest gaming market, and I think that SCMC was really on the cutting edge of designing a game that was deep enough and had a high enough skill ceiling to be played professionally competitively.
And now you cast the first 2 seasons of VIPL, obviously won by North American teams, Gangstars and Arden Alliance. And then this last, obviously, the 3rd season, the Korean teams had won. Now, do you think that there is a little bit of a shift in power now with Korean teams starting to dominate this esport?
I don't know if it's really a shift in terms of Korean power. Watching the World Championship this year, I mean, Hack did get eliminated by Gangstars, so there's that aspect to it. And whether it's just Druid, who is obviously ludicrously good, at Vainglory, and is it the Koreans or is it Druid and Mango? I think is like an actually more relevant question. We've seen in the history of Vainglory NA be traditionally the dominant scene, right? I've definitely been impressed by NA. So I don't know if I'd say for sure that it's like Korea dominant. I think it's pretty balanced, except for Druid and Mango are really excellent players.
Amen. Curveball here. Again, through stalking, you had a DJ name, Vainglory?
Yeah, I did. That's actually hilarious because so Vainglory is like an old school English word. It's a real word, right? That means like vanity to the point of folly, which I thought was a good tongue-in-cheek way to reference my own, arrogance as a human being, because I thought it was amusing. And so, yes, I was actually DJ Vainglory.
As a caster thing, you have been described as kind of blunt and honest, or blunt but honest. Even in high school, you got voted. What was your senior superlative? Most pretentious? Was that it?
No, that's a fucking lie. Okay,
listen,
so
Wiki says
we've
that.
been over this many times. There isn't anything. That's just a Wikipedia lie that somebody put on like an Esportspedia page about me. See, this is okay. So Thorin, when we were discussing this on one of Thorin and my shows, what he did was, you could look at this now on like the Liquipedia for Overwatch. It's been added now. So that never happened. Obviously, they're not going to torture high school children by voting them most pretentious. Now, we can say, if that vote had happened, would I have won? Probably. I can agree with that. But the thing is, it obviously never actually happened. So what Thorin did was he referenced that, and then he said on one of our shows that I had been influenced by the song Arms Wide Open by Creed when I was, as one of my primary inspirations, and it has shaped my life in many ways. So he was bullshitting about that. He was just creating a citation for more Wikipedia fraud. So now that's in my Liquipedia Overwatch page.
Now you kind of touch base on Super Evo Megacorp and kind of how you feel in regards to them. Now compared to Riot's handling of League of Legends, in the same kind of like 2 years, do you think that in a sense, do you think that it has that room to kind of grow and rival Riot's growth?
Well, I technically speaking, any mobile esport has the potential to vastly outstrip any PC title, just given the number of mobile devices and the growing number of mobile devices in the world. I think that in terms of esports, like there's still a lot of work to be done. Vainglory has been growing pretty nicely, though. There's some pretty decent numbers for the World Championship when I was watching. So I do think that there's so much room for growth there. And really the challenge in the mobile market is converting in any game. The biggest challenge is converting the users of that game into viewers of the game from an esports perspective, right? And actually, even though Riot has the largest esports viewership in the West, if not the world, they've actually done a pretty poor job of conversion. If you look at their 100 million active monthly users and then you look at the viewership for their title, they actually haven't done a very good job. Now, you compare this to a game like Smite, and Hi-Rez has actually done some of the best work, right? So I do think that there's work to be done there by SCMC in order to actually successfully convert more and more and more of these users into hardcore Vainglory players. But hopefully with the launch of 2.0 and the integration of all the new features, that will be more successful moving forward.
Specifically in regards to Vainglory, what do you think that they are kind of missing in their community? Do you think that should there be more tournaments, should there be more reporting, etc.? I
mean, I think that they're starting to spin up their own leagues. I think it's nice to see that investment from the company in order to make that happen. They've started to, get a lot of casters from the West, in at these events and created a continuity that way. One thing that I always want to see with any game is that there's in-client spectation options, such as just being able to go in and control the camera yourself and maybe just follow one player around so you can learn more about that particular positions, whether it's like a roam player that you like, watch their play style more specifically without being tethered to the Twitch camera.
Now, in regards to competitive play as well, do you think that there should be an age requirement?
I generally think in the West that 17 is a pretty good number. I feel like that's an age where the majority of people can decide whether or not they're going to be dropping out of high school is going to be a good idea for them, and they can make a more responsible decision. So I don't know. I think it's a really hard call. especially with minors where their parents have to sign off on them too.
You have, 13 years of stage experience. You have a ton of experience in casting. And even some of the articles you reference finding your own voice. I mean, what would be some advice that you would give to kind of people coming up in that world wanting to be casters?
You do very much, and one thing I always say is go get vocal training done. You need to understand how to utilize your voice. And a lot of people have knowledge, but they don't have the technical skills in order to be a caster. And a really good example of this is Deficio in League of Legends, who, as a caster, when he first started casting, had a horrendous Danish accent and had to go to an accent, a vocal coach and an accent trainer to eliminate that accent and make it more palatable for people listening to him, because it was really bad, but he's worked amazingly hard and he sounds entirely different 2 years later.
Monte, in terms of kind of game ownership, how would you rate Super Evil Megacorp's handling of Vainglory compared to Riot's handling of League of Legends in the same first 2 years of existence?
I think comparably. I think Riot, well, actually, no. I mean, if we're talking about the first 2 years of existence, we're talking about pre-LCS. So it was mostly just using ESL and MLG to compete and create a circuit where their very early iterations of their esports department went around and was basically at events sort of monitoring everything. So League of Legends esports didn't really begin in the first 2 years. It really didn't even start in earnest until 2012, right? And then it wasn't until 2013 when the LCS actually began. So, but it's a different time. Obviously, Riot has set up a very good model with the LCS for people to mimic going forward. And I do see that going well for Vainglory right now. They've started to have more professional venues, audiences, stage design, everything like that. So they're learning. Obviously, it's not at the same scale that LCS is at right now, but it's moving faster for sure. But that's to be expected, given that it's a very different time half a decade on.
And with Super Evil Megacorp just announcing their franchise program, what are your thoughts overall for this move?
I'm generally in favor of franchising because I think it creates more stability, especially from the monetary end of the scene, because people want to have certain, especially team owners, and I can speak knowing many team owners, knowing many prospective professional sports teams who are interested in this space, and being a former team owner myself, that I know the fans and part of me from a competitive aspect doesn't like franchising because relegations or the open circuit creates opportunities for new teams to rise, right? And doesn't lock other people out, gives new talent from a management or ownership perspective the chance to prove themselves and to eclipse what other people have done previously. But that said, I think we're at a point where, since everybody's chomping at the bit, it will make things move faster and get more money, more stability into the scene. Is that worth the cost of having these other, perhaps what fans might argue is less competitive structures? That's a debate. For me, it is. It is worth that trade-off. So I'm personally in favor of franchising across these titles.
And now we've heard that only a few kind of franchise spots will be awarded this year. How do you think that will affect the organizations that obviously do not get a spot?
Well, I think they're fucked. Like, what other answer is there, really? I do hope that, as I do hope with every game, that the developers or the people running the league do take into consideration the endemic teams that really help to build their competitive esports scene. And I certainly hope to see that in Vainglory as well. And hopefully SEMC can, such as what Riot does, help try and pair endemic teams with non-endemic owners off and facilitate those marriages later.
And now, obviously, esports has been growing exponentially. And in 2016, you were named one of the most important people of esports. I mean, what is getting that kind of accolade, what that kind of recognition mean as the community grows?
I mean, I think I deserve it, frankly.
Touche. That's it.
To be quite blunt, I do so much behind the scenes in the industry. I do consulting. I'm one of the major champions in the past for player rights and for team rights, to be a good representative. And I think one of my advantages is that now that I no longer own a team, I'm one of the very few truly neutral people in esports who understands pretty thoroughly how the business side of things operates and has been around as like an OG esports person who has seen a lot of the fuck ups and a lot of the successes over the years.
Well, I love the OG reference. So as the OG of esports in that sense, to kind of round this out, what would be some of your final words then, for specifically for the Vainglory community?
Keep watching the game. I mean, I think that Vainglory is truly a remarkable first foray into mobile esports. It's stuff like this that isn't, Clash Royale is another one that I think has potential, but that's really pay to win in a lot of ways, right? So what I like about what SEMC is doing is that like most other esports, it's not a pay to win game. It's a skill-based game. You can't buy power, really, which I suppose is true in Clash Royale given enough time as well, but it's harder in that game, let's just say. I see it really as a first foray into mobile esports, but what SEMC has done is create an amazing, robust system for the first time for esports in a mobile environment. So keep on supporting that, and I hope that we see further evolutions and further titles from SEMC to continue to drive this thing forward, as well as just more action in the Vainglory space, which seems to be growing quite quickly, globally.
Monte, dude, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I mean, that's it. It was great getting to talk to you. Again, I appreciate it, and obviously we'll be seeing you around.
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.
All right, man.